raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
We have been given a gift by God today to usher in a new dynasty.
Now you get RFK Jr.
Don't you want a president who's going to make America healthy again?
You get Tulsi Gabbard.
Putting our country in a continual state of war.
You get Elon Musk and you get J.D. Vance.
A hell of a way to start the next 4 years.
The right-wing Avengers.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
Department of Defense under Donald Trump will achieve peace through strength.
Shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one.
The rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
The golden age of America has most definitely begun.
Begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay.
They're getting the dirtbags off these streets.
There's one guy who can fix this shit, and it's Donald Trump.
What's storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Stand strong. The day is here. The battle's near. Put on the armor. Yeah. Belt the truth around my waist. Feet of peace, I take my place. Breastplate shining righteousness. Shield of faith, no fear, no death. Helmet of salvation, crown. The word of spirit cuts them down. Darkness trembles, shadows fall. I'm clothed in fire, I hear the call. Armor of God, I will not yield. Stand in the light, my sword, my shield. Against the night, against the light. The armor of God will never die.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're in the world. My name is Josh, and welcome to the Red Pill Project's Daily Dose, live with you Monday through Friday. I hope everybody is doing well out there and having a great week, a great hump day. And yes, there's something different. I dropped 10 years. Look at that. Shaved my beard, and all of a sudden, woohoo! I don't know. I kind of missed the beard already. I shaved it, and I'm like, I think it's time to grow it back. But hey, you know what? Got to change those looks every once in a while. I appreciate everybody in the chat just looking out there. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you so much. You guys are amazing, man. It's I'm blessed to have such a great audience. And yeah, I know I shaved, right? I don't know what brought it about, and I just woke up. Okay, I was trimming and I screwed up, but hey, it happened. So you know what? It's just a few months and I can grow it back. Baby face. Yep, you're right. Baby face. So, you know, today's an interesting day. I published an article today about Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to go over that article. We're going to talk a little bit about that. It's kind of a collaboration of research that I've been doing over the last few years, pulling from other people's research as well. I can't leave that out. But what we're seeing right now is the veil is being lifted upon this dark world that many people did not know existed. Things that were conspiracy theories a decade ago are now mainstream. Things like Q are now getting mainstream validation. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, whoever thought that all of those news articles from the mainstream media pertaining to QAnon stating that, oh, it's a right-wing conspiracy theory that claims that the global elite eat babies and are rampant pedophiles would come back to haunt them. I mean, think about that. It's going to come back to haunt them because of the Jeffrey Epstein files. And I believe that there is a lot more to come. So in the midst of that, the one idea that I think everybody needs to keep in mind is that the primary domain of everything that we're battling in is the information domain. This is an information war. And I went over multiple different times of how this war was sieged, I guess is the best word. It's not won yet, but it was sieged from the mainstream narrative, from the Mockingbird media. And every day we are reminded of that. Like today, the Washington Post says 1/3 of its staff across all departments, not just the newsroom, are being laid off. We are witnessing the end of an era of the mainstream media. See, big multinational conglomerates, large corporations, they don't adapt very fast to the changing of a fast-paced world. When technology begins to exponentiate, when how information is consumed begins to change, large corporations, transnational organizations have a hard time adjusting to that. And what we are witnessing, or what we have witnessed and what is happening over the course of the last decade plus, is that we the people have taken back that information domain. We the people rose up in the spot of the mainstream Mockingbird media, and they are falling off the cliff and we are rising up. This is the idea of taking back the idea of information. And it's truly wondrous to look out there and watch CNN fail, watch the Washington Post, MSNBC, all of these places fail, because for the longest time, they construed a false narrative. For the longest time, they misled the people. For the longest time, they were nothing more than agents for a globalist agenda that tried to mislead humanity into believing one thing that was not the truth. And now, we have truth in every corner. We have influencers in every corner that can go out there and tell you their perspective of the news. And so this is kind of where it's interesting, because instead of going out there and hearing the same cookie cutter news day in and day out, what you get is you get something that's more aligned with your understanding of the world, something that is spoken to you in more relative terms of how you understand things. As well, is you get to see through the bullshit. You get to see through the absolute nonsense and bullshit, the bias, the constructed narrative. You get to see through the manipulation, the propaganda. You get to witness exactly how they were manipulating the masses of people for the longest time, and today still are. So, interesting time to be alive, and I'm excited that, the one thing that we actually have to do and get rid of is, and I got to remember, it's I always remember the first word, but I don't remember the second word, is the, I don't even know, I should have had it right here. There we go. I have a notebook, and I keep massive amounts of notes, and it does help to have notes. Oh, the Munn-Smith Act. Yeah. So, getting rid of what Barack Obama did by allowing the mainstream media to directly lie to the American people. That is one thing that President Trump needs to reverse immediately. We'll see if that actually comes about, but we, the people, have to push for that. We, the people, have to be that pressure force on the United States government. I always looked at this in this perspective, that you have your three branches of government, the legislative, judicial, and the executive. And they are highly influenced by a fourth branch of government that is separated, as go back to the early 1900s when this occurred, are separated by the political lobby, special interest groups, foreign interests, and the people. And see, the lobby and the people both apply pressure to each one of those systems to ensure that those systems are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, that the checks and balances are in place. But for the longest time, we, the people, have swayed away from that responsibility. But now it's time for us to put that responsibility back in place. It's time for us, the people, to go back and take our powers that God granted us to over our government, to keep our government in check. So when you have black pillars and faggot out there that are saying that, how dare you question the Trump administration? Oh, you're a black pillar because, you're questioning what we're doing and things take time. No, that's our duty as American citizens. It is it is the one thing that we have, the one power that we have as American citizens, to go out there and actually apply pressure, the politicians, the president, the executive, the judicial, and hold them accountable for holding others accountable. That pressure is our God-given right to be the government for the people, of the people, by the people. At least that's my perspective. The House Judiciary Committee confirms that the EU, I love this, interfered in 8 European elections in Slovakia, the Netherlands, France, Romania, Moldova, and Ireland. That's interesting. So the House Judiciary Committee has gone out there and validated that, hey, look, the EU is stealing elections throughout all of Europe. When is that House Judiciary Committee going to look at U.S. elections? Just saying. I mean, we can focus on European elections and determine that they're stolen. But yeah, what about U.S. elections? How about we focus on U.S. elections? Why would we look at the states in our own country? Well, we just get news today that DNI Tulsi Gabbard's team, actually at the beginning of last year, went out there and they reviewed the election machines in Puerto Rico and found no wrongdoing. Why the fuck are you looking at election machines in Puerto Rico? Go to Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Chicago, Colorado, Arizona, Georgia. Why are you going to Puerto Rico? It's things like that that make me question, what the hell are some of these people actually doing? Who's coming up with these bright ideas? Well, there's this election integrity thing and we need to look into it. So let's go to Puerto Rico and check out their election machines. What? Like, let's get some boots on the ground. Let's go out there and check some in Georgia. Let's go check some in Arizona. Let's check it where we believe that they were stolen in 2020. How about that? Let's check them in places we know that there was problems, like Michigan in 2024. Arizona 2024. Not only that is, let's keep in mind how those elections were actually stolen. They weren't stolen by brute force, stealing votes right off the top in Democrat strongholds. They slipped Democrats into red counties, red districts, slowly and surely. Some of them didn't even win, but they changed the voting to overall they would win a certain area. So we need to up the pressure. That's my thoughts, is we need to up the pressure and demand accountability more so now than not. Now, what does Donald Trump say about the midterms? Because we do have the midterms fastly approaching. Let's listen. He did, him and JD Vance both did interviews today with NBC. So let's listen to what Trump has to say about the midterm.
Will you trust the results of the midterms if Republicans lose control of Congress?
I will, if the elections are honest. Look, I want the last one that wants to complain. I just had a great election. They say one of the greatest elections, you will agree, ever. Won all 7 swing states. Won 84% of the counties in America. That's why the map is all red. We just had a great election. I believe there was cheating. I think there was cheating.
Well, speaking of counties, what are you doing in Fulton County?
It was too big to rig.
Speaking of counties, what is happening? Will you?
So right there, Donald Trump saying, look, I will absolutely accept the results of the election if the election is truthful, honest, safe, and secure. I think that this is a hint and an indication that we're about to see something, that we're about to see potentially a national emergency on election integrity and election infrastructure. Because at the end of the day, election infrastructure is a matter of national security. Hence why Tulsi Gabbard is involved directly in all of this. And I think Donald Trump is going to go in there and signify that. Now, what did Donald Trump say about Georgia? Let's listen to what he said about Georgia.
But let me ask you this. If China or any of these countries are involved in our elections, that would bring her into it. And everybody knows that Russia, they talked about Russia, it turned out to be a hoax. It was Hunter Biden, it wasn't Russia. Look, we have to have honest elections. Yeah. There should be nothing wrong with the fact that they went in, got ballots from a while ago, and they're going to look at them. And now they're going to find out the true winner of that state.
So I also find this interesting in the approach of the Trump administration going into the 2020 election. You got to remember, it was simply Donald Trump would have won that election if it wasn't for just one state. It was obviously multiple states. So it was Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan at that time, but also Georgia. But Georgia would actually be the determiner of this. If Donald Trump won Georgia, it proves without a shadow of a doubt that the election was stolen. And there's enough evidence right now to substantiate that Georgia was stolen. And so I think what he just said right there, that once it's found out what happened in Georgia, whether it was China or another country or whatnot, we're going to take action from there. Now keep that in mind, because I think that's truly important. Is they're going to go into Georgia. They're going to reveal all the evidence. They're going to show, hey, this is what happened. This is how it happened. 357,000 ballots just disappeared from Donald Trump or injected from Joe Biden. How did this happen? What happened? So with this information, what we're going to see is the unveiling of how Georgia was stolen. And once that occurs, the regular normies, the leftist liberals, it'll be very difficult for them to deny it. And once they can't deny it, once they accept it, then when we come out in the context of election integrity, protecting election infrastructure through national security emergencies, it's going to make a lot more sense. He's going to have the legal precedence to actually do that because of what happened in 2020. Right now, he doesn't have the legal precedence to go out there and declare a national emergency on election integrity and infrastructure, simply because there's no validated proof through the DOJ or through the DNI that election theft actually occurred. But once it comes out in Georgia, and I believe that that's probably going to be relatively soon, probably in the next week, 2 weeks, once that occurs, that's going to give him the legal precedence to go out there and declare a national emergency on election integrity and infrastructure, which then was going to prompt a whole level of change, potentially even removing voting machines or voting machine companies from the billet of the next election, the midterms. So this will be pretty interesting to see where this goes. Now, Donald Trump did mention one thing there. The one thing he said is that, what if it was China behind this? Now, another thing happened yesterday. There was a massive bust of biolabs, or just one biolab in the United States. This isn't the first biolab that has been busted in the United States. We found many of these. Not only have we found biolabs in the United States, but we've also found Chinese scientists and citizens who are working and bringing bioweapons into our country. All right. So feds investigates alleged Chinese-linked biolab found in a Las Vegas home. And I said it right here. I kind of said the truth for everybody to hear. There are potentially hundreds of these biolabs in the U.S., along with the so-called police stations, which are actually Chinese military intelligence hubs. Are you paying attention? During the Biden administration, hundreds of thousands and potentially millions of Chinese military-aged men came over the border. Chinese special forces are funding and operating with Mexican cartels. China helped fund the massive migration from the Middle East and Africa into Venezuela, then to the United States. Ask yourself why. There's only one answer that fits the questions. We are at war. This is unrestricted warfare with no rules. You'll see a lot more of this here in the next few months. And I do believe you're going to see a lot more about this here in the next few months. Simply put, there are factions in China that are still pushing to dominate and control and overthrow the United States of America. Now, do you find it interesting that yesterday the biolab is ransacked, taken over by the DOJ? Then today, Trump says that what if China's behind Georgia? And what happens today? Donald Trump holds a phone call with President Xi Jinping of China. He says, I've just completed an excellent telephone conversation with President Xi of China. It was a long and thorough call where many important subjects were discussed, including trade, military, the April trip that I'll be making to China, which I very much look forward to, Taiwan, the war between Russia and Ukraine, the current situation with Iran, the purchase of oil and gas by China from the United States, the consideration by China of the purchase of additional agricultural products, including lifting the soybean count to 20 million tons for the current season. They have committed to 25 million tons for the next season. Airplane engine deliveries, and numerous other subjects, all very positive. The relationship with China and my personal relationship with Xi Jinping is an extremely good one, and we both realize how important it is to keep it that way. I believe that there will be many positive results achieved over the next 3 years of my presidency, having to do with President Xi and the People's Republic of China, President Donald J. Trump. Now, number one, he says the relationship with China, my personal relationship with Xi Jinping, is an extremely good one, and we both realize how important this is to keep it that way. Now, you know, Donald Trump very rarely ever mentions the CCP or the PLA, right? And I think there's reasons for that. There's a recent purge of military personnel from China, which I've talked about and pointed out. Over the summer, we saw that there was even coup attempts directly on Xi Jinping by the military generals, by Jintao, by various elders within the CCP, utilizing the PLA as a force of domination. General Charles Flynn actually came out on X, and he says he put out this post about his take on the PLA purges in China. I'm going to read this to you because I think that this is really interesting. He goes, and this is General Charles Flynn, just retired in January of last year when Trump took office, General Michael Flynn's brother. A different road that Xi's PLA purges and what it really tells us. The wave of commentary on Xi Jinping's latest PLA purges from academics, from FA articles to the New York Times and think tanks almost uniformly frames it as proof of Xi tightening his grip on the Chinese Communist Party and military. That's the wrong lens. This story isn't primarily about what Beijing is doing to itself. It's about what we, the United States and our allies, are doing to China. For the first time in decades, the strategic environment is no longer bending to Beijing's favor. Sustained multi-domain competitive pressure is quietly eroding the CCP's confidence in its own trajectory. Xi's purges are not a sign of unchallenged strength. They are a symptom of strategic doubt. Authoritarian systems purge when they stop thrusting their own institutions, fear miscalculation, and sense the outside world becoming less permissive. That doubt is being created deliberately by U.S.-led strategy. Now, I'm going to go, hold on, I'm going to stop his article real quick, and I'm going to tell you something. Remember during the summer when we were saying that Xi Jinping was embarrassed on the global stage by Donald Trump, that Donald Trump's strategy was to undermine the CCP by dismantling the Belt and Roads Initiative, by basically going out renegotiating our own trade deals and tariffs to undermine China trade, that the Chinese elders in the CCP looked at Xi Jinping as weak because he was losing in the global fight against Donald Trump? What does General Charles Flynn say right here? That doubt is being created deliberately by U.S.-led strategy. Deterrence isn't rhetoric, it's conditions, and we are actively shaping them. Here is the menu. Reinforcing self-help and resilience within Indo-Pacific partners, Taiwan, Japan, Philippines, Australia, and presuming NATO allies to step up and carry their share of the burden. Rebuilding domestic industrial capacity, supply chains, and economic resilience, especially through critical minerals and rare earth elements developed to break Beijing's leverage, using strategic tariffs to rebalance trade deficits and protect American workers and industries, demonstrating credible hard power through strategic operations like Midnight Hammer and Absolute Resolve, showing we can strike precisely and decisively, deregulating the U.S. energy sector to unleash innovation and secure energy independence, racing to win the AI while investing heavily in science, health, and defense technologies that drive massive opportunity and rejuvenate American innovation. This is not accidental. It is integrated strategy, diplomacy, economics, technology, military posture, and real alliance teamwork compounding over time. He says, up close, I've watched American soldiers fight for years in combat. In their DNA is an innate ability to improvise and innovate, to think fast, adapt faster, and build solutions on the fly. That's exactly what the CCP, President Xi, and every totalitarian leader fears most, the unleashed spirit of American ingenuity. We were born to be thinkers and builders. When that spirit is fully released across every sector by every American, our adversaries will be left reading our taillights, unable to keep up. That reality matters enormously for Taiwan. A Chinese leadership that is unsure of its military, uncertain about escalation control, and increasingly aware of allied cohesion is far less likely to roll the dice on aggression. When the costs are high, the risks are uncertain, and confidence is being denied. Misadventure becomes a gamble they cannot afford. The real story isn't Xi's grip tightening. The real story is U.S. and allied strategy working quietly, yes, unevenly at times, but cumulatively, shaping an environment where aggression is harder and less attractive. This is the operational inflection point that deserves attention. If we stay the course, doubling down on innovation, resolve, and alliance cohesion, we don't just deter threats, we can strategically shape a future where freedom and prosperity lead. Now, what he just said there, isn't that exactly what we've been talking about in the context of the unrestricted warfare domain of what the Trump administration over the last year has been doing? Utilizing economics, trade, various different tariffs, negotiations, deals, utilizing strength through force, Venezuela, Iran, to go out there and basically undermine the CCP's grip through the BRICS nations on its Belt and Roads Initiative, on the New Silk Road, to dismantle that, making Xi Jinping look vulnerable, look like an idiot, and embarrass him in front of the nation, to make various different coup attempts to actually rise up against Xi Jinping inside of China, but at the same time limiting any potential for future aggression or conflict between the U.S. and China. It's absolutely genius, but what he just described there is unrestricted warfare. What he is telling you is that this is a strategy developed by generals, developed by the military, that is being implemented by the Trump administration, and it's unrestricted warfare at its finest. Now, China, I don't think consequences are going to come to China about U.S. elections or their involvement. I think it'll be noted that there was Chinese involvement. I believe there'll be even blame brought about by Chinese involvement. But I think the most important context is going to be following the money. It's going to be things that we're seeing happen right now with investigations that are going in Minnesota, with investigations that are going on in NGOs and institutional levels that are really going to be the fall guy. Because when you start to look at how this is all intertwined, about how these NGOs and institutions that sit as these middlemen of implementation and financial funding are behind massive amounts of protests, the riots that create violence. They're behind political character assassinations. They're behind the control of the media. They're behind news articles and information and fake dossiers. They're behind operations to flood the streets of the American cities with illegal immigrants. Once all of that is brought together, and then you start to see that those same institutions, those same NGOs are directly involved in election fraud, that's where the ball is going to drop. You know, we've been saying this for the long time on the show, is that you have to cut off the head of that snake. You have to dismantle all of these pieces at the same time. And one of the most critical parts of this whole beast system is that NGO and institutional level. This is the financing level. It's like the Jeffrey Epstein level of his infrastructure. The moment you start removing that whole level of that financial infrastructure and you pull its feet out from under it, it begins to collapse upon its own weight. And let me go in here. All right. Talk about election integrity, election fraud. CanCon. He put out a great article, and I just kind of want to do a quick summary on this. He's talking about Senator David Perdue's RICO testimony unsealed. Senator Perdue testified in the Trump RICO special grand jury that Governor Brian Kemp shut down a compelling investigation into in 2020 ballot harvesting in Georgia. Then director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Vic Reynolds, told Senator Perdue, "I am a team player. If the governor doesn't want to investigate, we're not going to investigate. You said that although Mr. Reynolds had received evidence that he felt was compelling enough to open an investigation, that he was not going to investigate because the governor had told him not to." And Perdue said, "That's one of the things he said." Yeah. 1 month before the special grand jury testimony, Vic Reynolds was appointed a Superior Court judge by Governor Brian Kemp. And Reynolds wasn't the only person who ignored election fraud evidence and maladministration and got appointed to the Supreme Court judgeship. He wasn't even the second one. Reynolds was presented with video evidence, cell phone data, bank records, and testimony of a ballot harvester. Reynolds claimed that the GBI made repeated requests to True the Vote for their witnesses. True the Vote denies this, saying that they actually reached out to the GBI after their one and only meetings were ignored. From TTV's Catherine Engelbrecht, "After that meeting, we made repeated attempts to re-engage with the GBI and never received a response." The question is why did Brian Kemp order GBI not to investigate an alleged crime with evidence that would ultimately lead to an unprecedented RICO case against the former president and his party's front-running candidate? Huge. So this is some of the things that you're going to see begin to come out in the investigation that the FBI is doing in the Georgia. Brian Kemp is going to be implicated. Not only is Brian Kemp going to be implicated, many others in Georgia in the Republican Good Old Boys Club will be implicated. NGOs and institutions are going to be at the forefront and center. Remember, Mark Zuckerbucks in Georgia. All of this is going to come out. And I think that we're going to see this actually happen in the course of the next few weeks as it begins to roll out. And I like to look at this as setting the precedent, because one thing I noticed about Donald Trump is that he likes to utilize a snowball effect, right? Is that you build up anticipation for things and you slow roll it as that ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger to a crescendo to where it finally bursts and explodes. And I think that we're coming up on that now with the raid of the FBI in Georgia, in Fulton County, with what we're seeing with the release of David Perdue's deposition, that we're going to see all of this begin to collide at the same time that we see the Florida grand juries also come out with indictments. So I think that this could be a very epic time over the course of the next 2 to 3 months. I've said this, that we literally only have 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 to 5 months to secure the elections for the midterms before it's too late. And 6 months is really like pushing it. But I do believe that around that same time in 6 months, that there could be a strategy used by the Trump administration Now, hear me out here. That strategy might be let the elections begin, let people go out there and do their primaries, and then in the midst of the primaries, after all the winners are set and they begin their campaigns for Congress and Senate, then you unredact names from the Epstein files. Then you release other names from the Epstein files. Donald Trump said just the other day that the majority of Democrats and their donors are in the Epstein files, but yet we've seen zero other than like Chuck Schumer and Haskett in there. Okay, so where are the rest of them? Well, maybe that document release is being saved right about summertime when their campaigns begin to roll off the shelf. Now, why would that be strategically important if this was true? I want you to think about Democrat incumbents in Senate and in Congress, people like Adam Schiff. Imagine them going into the summer and beginning campaigning for re-election. Now, I don't know if Adam Schiff is up for re-election. I believe he is. Senate is every 4 years and they alter. But let's just assume people like Adam Schiff. So this summer, they're out there, they roll out their campaign. Then all of a sudden, a new tranche of Epstein files come out and these people get massively implicated. Things that are so horrible that they have to resign, that they no longer are running. Now, I want you to think about the timing of that. You are already past the primaries. They are halfway into their campaign prior to the midterms. It completely dismantles the Democrat machine moving into the midterm elections. Not only does it dismantle them, but it pulls the rug underneath them and shows them complicit and compromised in the face of evil and corruption. That's huge. I have a feeling that's what we're about to see happen, that these things are being saved for specific strategic timing. Now, J.D. Vance also did an interview today. I got to get a little sippy sip. I got to get a little shippity ship. And that stuff is delicious. I don't know how good it is for me. It doesn't have sugar in it, but it's definitely delicious. It's stevia soda, but it's definitely delicious. This is like a peach cream. Oh my goodness. It's awesome. And let me go here. I wanted to do a segue with an ad, but we gotta get those numbers up, people. We gotta get those numbers up. All right. J.D. Vance. You know, it's interesting. What J.D. Vance is about to say right here is something that I've been talking about for the last year. That you are witnessing the Trump world order. Listen to this.
What's happening culturally in Europe, what's their crackdowns on free speech. They just look less and less like we do.
Yeah.
And there's a real question about whether there's a massive shift happening now in terms of world alliances long term.
Well, there's definitely, I think, a new world order. I think the president has sought to it. There's a new world order in trade. There's a new world order in globalization and the way that we invest in our economy versus, foreign supply chains. There's a new world order and that the president is willing to shake up some old alliance structures. I mean, NATO, I think, is much different because of the president's leadership than it was 10 years ago. It was sort of coasting. It was effectively a protectorate of the United States of America. Obviously, you saw what happened in Venezuela. So, yeah, the president is putting a stamp on world history, but fundamentally in an America first way. Like
what's happening culturally in...
And you're right. Yes, it is a 6-year term in the U.S. Senate. My bad. And they do alternate. But J.D. Vance there. Yes, Donald Trump is forming a new world order. What is that new world order? Well, he's dismantling the system of the old guard, the Western oligarchical controlled, technocratic, commie-fascist new world order that was heading towards a one world government. And he's installing a multipolar global framework, a multipolar world to where countries compete on the global marketplace within a free market dynamic. Wow, that's amazing. That unrestricted warfare is rampant and there is the risk of all of that. But it is a more prosperous type of environment for countries to grow and actually excel beyond other countries. And this is kind of where we are heading. So fantastic right there that we heard that, because now we're changing the verbiage of the mentality. Now the word New World Order is transitioning away from something that was dark and evil of a one world government and moving towards something that we can actually look forward to. So MJ Truth earlier today, the No Kings financials have been released. The financiers, Arabella Advisors, 79 million, Warren Buffett, 16 million, Ford Foundation, 51 million, Rockefeller Foundation, 26 million, Soros Foundation, 72 million, the Tides Foundation, 45 million, over $294 million raised by the No Kings protests. Remember when I was just talking about NGOs just a moment ago, and how those NGOs actually play a direct role in the configuration of how everything pans out? That all of these same NGOs were involved in the mass illegal immigration into our country. They were the same ones funding through international proxies, through the United Nations, and through various different other collaborative efforts. Everything that was happening in the Darien Gap, everything that was happening at the U.S. border with warehouse buildings going up to house illegal immigrants for 2 weeks while they collaborate with the Joe Biden administration to get paid while housing them, while feeding them, charging anywhere from $1,100 a week per illegal immigrant while feeding them beans and rice. I shit you not. This was what was going on. These are the same NGOs and institutions that were involved in that. They're the same ones that got people into the sanctuary cities, into Democrat cities. They are the same ones that funded the No Kings protests. They're the same ones that funded the Summer of Love, the same ones that were funding the ICE protests that turns into violent riots throughout our cities. Now start to take that into context, because guess what? They are also the same ones that brought about institutions and NGOs that pertained to election integrity in 2020. They are also the same ones that funded campaigns against Donald Trump on the ground. But when you go to the Soros connections, now you start to see that there's other connectivity that brings about. The connections to Lord Mark Malloch Brown, who was the CEO of Smartmatic from 2014 to 2020, but also was one of the main leaders over at the George Soros Open Society Foundation. The Tides and the Ford Foundation were the connections to Bill Gates. Now you have COVID-19. You start to put it all together, and this is that financial kind of intermediary that sits right there, that holds their whole system together. And once you rug pull that whole system, the whole system begins to collapse. It begins to fade away. That's what we mean about following the money. And when you get into Jeffrey Epstein, there's a lot more about following the money. So Trump now says he's adjusting his mass deportation policy to only go into cities if the mayors and governors ask and say please, adding, I don't want to go in and force ourselves into a city, even if their numbers are terrible. Now, this is an interesting shift and transition by the Trump administration. Now, what is he really saying? My perspective is this. It goes back to something Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, said. He said, we are going to utilize the same template that we used in Minnesota throughout the rest of the country. See, I think Minnesota was a setup by the Trump administration on those same organizations. I think the massive inflow of ICE into the state was done on purpose, intentionally, to draw in the response, to get the left to shoot their wad, to begin, this is it, this is the time, get all the people there, let's rise up, let's get out there, this is our point in time for massive chaos. And they do that, and they get out there, and then Trump rug pulls them. He de-escalates the situation, he pulls them all out. But during that point in time, intelligence was gathered. The financials were reviewed and understood. Who was bringing these people in? Who were the operators? How is their network established? How are they communicating? Who are they communicating with? What local factions are they operating with? All of that's known now, and it's all under investigation. And now they can just take that template, knowing that those same NGOs and institutions are the same ones operating in California, New York, Illinois. You can now extrapolate that and begin to just look at that through a cookie cutter perspective, that you no longer have to go in and just inject ICE into these massive cities to get that response, because you know the network. And so what does Scott Bessent say? Scott Bessent comes out and says that we're going to investigate these institutions and NGOs. We're going to investigate the money trail. We're going to investigate the fraud and the corruption. And what's happening in California right now? Massive amounts of corruption, of misappropriation of taxpayer dollars, whether it's California taxpayer dollars or federal taxpayer dollars, into basically black voids that were being funneled off to international organizations, NGOs, funneled off into friends and various different allies to Newsom and the Democrats, funding into the NGOs that the NGOs then fund back into protests and riots. This is the key part to pay attention to, because what happened in Minnesota was a setup, a massive setup on the deep state, on the globalists, on these international organizations, the NGOs and the institutions, to find out truly how it all connects, and then utilize that as a point of investigation throughout the entire country. So this is kind of interesting, but also the de-escalation makes Donald Trump look like a good president in the public purview, right? Now the public is saying, well, you know, I mean, he took the wrong approach and now he's backing off. Yeah, exactly. Atomic Blonde, $20 super chat on YouTube. Thank you so much for breaking it all down for us, Josh. Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, Atomic Blonde. And I got to get a sippy sip of water here in a second, people. I hope you don't mind. I hope you don't mind. Get my big old water bottle. Oh, this is interesting. The largest healthcare fraud takedown in the U.S. Department of Justice history. Schemes of over $14.6 billion in false and fraudulent claims submitted to Medicare and Medicaid. $245 million in cash, cryptocurrency, luxury vehicles, and other assets seized. Illegal diversion of over 15 million pills of controlled substances. $10.6 billion in fraudulent claims for urinary catheters and medical equipment. 325 defendants and 96 doctors, nurse practitioners, pharmacists, and other licensed professionals. This was done by the Department of Justice. And you know what? Thank freaking goodness. It's about time. Be Happy 22 on Rumble, $20 Rumble rent. Not the beard, Chris Kringle. Okay, thank you. Congratulations to the Department of Justice. This is actually huge. This is a huge win. And when we start to align this with the corruption that is being unturned within California, within Minnesota, New York is next, and other states, I want you to begin thinking. $34 trillion, $36 trillion of national debt. We're uncovering $1 trillion of fraud each year. Each year. $1 trillion of fraud. Trillions of dollars of fraud each year. What happens when you begin to eradicate those networks of fraud? What happens when you begin to stop spending money on nonsense and garbage and foreign adversaries and NGOs and institutions, but instead start reinvesting that money back into your own country? That's the future that we have in front of us right now. Scott Bessent just announced that the Internal Revenue Service is launching massive audits of financial institutions that facilitated the laundering of Minnesota funds. Remember when I was talking? Remember when I was just saying this? Banks, MSBs, financial middlemen, institutions, NGOs, anybody who helped move dirty money is about to get torched for once the IRS is being deployed for America First, not against American families. Huge. And let's listen quickly what Scott Bessent here says. You look so innocent, Josh, I know.
Civil enforcement is auditing financial institutions that facilitated the laundering of Minnesota funds, in addition to helping support criminal and civil enforcement efforts. The IRS will also soon announce the formation of a task force as civil enforcement.
And they're forming a task force which will run and operate this not only in just Minnesota, but it'll look everywhere. It'll look in all states. And like he said, he will use that cookie cutter model that was used in Minnesota to go to every state and begin eradicating these institutions that are fraudulent and corrupt. All right. Epstein. Epstein's full bank account breakdown just dropped. Over $101 million in cash spread across 30 shell companies and 7 banks. His biggest stash, $41.6 million, sitting in something called the Hayes Trust at Deutsche Bank. Companies named things like Gratitude America Ltd. and the Great St. Jim LLC, as in Little St. James Island, holding millions more. Deutsche Bank held $80.5 million of his total cash. The same bank that later paid $150 million to settle claims it facilitated under Epstein's trafficking. Now, this is just the beginning of these financial information being released, but I think it's important because once you start to follow the money of Epstein, a lot of revelations are going to come about. These revelations are, what was Epstein doing really with his influence and his money? I wrote a great article on this. If you've been listening to me for any time, you probably already know, but it's well worth the read. Jeffrey Epstein, the architect of global genetic control grid and superhumans. It is on X, but it's also on my Substack, and that's the primary place to get these articles. It's also on our website, but you can find that redpillproject.substack.com. Help support us over there. Jeffrey Epstein, the architect of the global genetic control grid and superhumans. We're talking about DNA harvesting, designer babies, human cloning, and quantum AI transhumanistic networks. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a sex trafficker or rampant pedophile. He was the architect of a genetic data harvesting operation that interfaced with the most powerful technological corporations, intelligence agencies, and transhumanist networks on Earth. While the world focused on his sexual blackmail operations, Epstein was building something far more sinister, a global infrastructure to collect DNA from vulnerable populations, particularly children, and funnel this genetic material into programs designed to create designer babies, human clones, and genetically engineered superhumans. Epstein, this is the fucked up thing about this article, and I'll bring it back up here in a second. It seems science fiction. It seems like it's just like, come on, conspiracy theory. These aren't my words. This is the evidence of what we are seeing, the people he was collaborating with, the things they were talking about, the things that were being funded by endowments that he was giving out there, grants that he was funding, the research that they were doing. This is real legitimate research that the Wellcome Leap Foundation, DARPA, Regina Dugan, that they're actually doing out there. This isn't a joke. This is reality. This is what they were actually freaking doing. I know people are reading this like, oh my God, come on, this is nonsense. It's not. This is real shit that they were doing. This is the story of how Jeffrey Epstein helped build the genetic control and designer DNA system we see emerging today. Who he worked with, what they were trying to achieve, and why his death buried the origins of a system that continues to operate today. Excuse me. Epstein's DNA empire. The Southern Trust and child harvesting operations. We talked about the Southern Trust multiple different times. In 2012, he launched the Southern Trust. And by the way, you go back to this financial information, and right there, Southern Trust Company Incorporated, $7 million on hand in Deutsche Bank, Southern Financial, LLC. While publicly described as providing consulting services, the company actually is focused on DNA data mining from biomedical and financial sources. Southern Trust explicitly targeted the most vulnerable populations for genetic harvesting. Mentally ill youth, autistic children, orphaned children, abused children, juvenile offenders, impoverished Caribbean islanders. DNA collected was sold to biotech firms, banks, and undisclosed technology companies. The operation had no legitimate business model beyond data acquisition. One of Epstein's major financial backers was Edmund de Rothschild Group, which provided millions in contracts. The company functioned as a genetic honeypot, luring vulnerable populations with promises of education or healthcare in exchange for their genetic material. And we see this reiterated within the Epstein files themselves. I want to go in here. So if you get an opportunity to go read this article, please do, and help share it and spread it. It's on Substack. You can check it out there, as well as it's on X, and you can check it out on X. We covered most of this yesterday and over the last few days. But one of the most important parts here is the connection to Regina Dugan at the Welcome Leap, who is former Google's advanced R&D division, former head of DARPA. This is a part of integration, because if you go back to the 2020 election, you remember former General Stanley McChrystal, how he was working for, Defeat Disinfo, which was an NGO organization created just for the 2020 election that was using a DARPA-style AI. It was a DARPA AI, an AI created by DARPA to run their operation. In other words, DARPA is very, very top secret, but yet these people are out in the real world with international organizations building the same level of technologies. I think that that's something that the DOJ would be really interested in and should probably start looking into, because it's these same people that are trying to develop clones, designer babies, genetic modification technology to make themselves live hundreds of years and elongate their own life, as well as increase their intelligence through AI integration, and then rule over the rest of humanity. Now, there is information out there right now that is hinting that Jeffrey Epstein isn't dead. And this is something that Alpha and myself have been talking about for a long time. WITSEC. What is it? 18 USC 3521. And people are like, well, Bill Barr, was a deep stater. Yeah, well, but it wasn't Bill Barr. It was Jeff Sessions. Attorney General Jeff Sessions. I think that Bannon was the intermediary to make all of these things happen. And this is why he's been very, very silent about his mention in the Epstein files. Just my thoughts. But we see that the person that took the 4chan a day before Epstein, or hours before Epstein killed himself, who said that Epstein was moved by a person in green fatigues in a wheelchair and removed from the facility from MCC. And then the FBI in New York actually subpoenaed 4chan to reveal this person's identity. And he sure and shit worked directly for the jail, which shows you that most likely Epstein is still alive. And I do believe that Epstein is still alive. And, we'll talk more about Epstein and this stuff probably later in the week. But I do believe there's more tranches of information that are going to come out. If you are on Rumble, this is going to be for the Rumble audience. But if you want to, you guys can all follow the link that I'm about to give. All right, parents, real talk for a second. America is about to hit a huge milestone. We're coming up on America's 250th birthday, 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-government the world has ever seen. This is the perfect moment to help your kids understand why this country matters, not just fireworks and hot dogs, but the story behind it all. There's a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday, and it's honestly a great way to introduce the kids to how America began, who the founding fathers were, what they risked, and why the idea they fought for still matters today. This guy's guide sends kids back to the moment when the brave men signed the Declaration of Independence, knowing full well they were risking their lives for freedom. It breaks it all down in a way that kids can actually understand and enjoy without watering it down or turning it into boring schoolwork. If you care about raising your kids who know where this country came from and why it's worth preserving, this is something you'll all want to grab. And the best part, it's completely free with a special offer. You just need to pay the $2 for shipping and processing. Just head to free250guide.com. That's free250guide.com. And the Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday for your kids today. And there's a QR code. It's also linked up directly in my Rumble, in the chat, and in the descriptions. So you guys can go grab that. I actually utilized the kids' guides for my kids. And I had a subscription with them when my kids were much younger, and we'd read it to them during bedtime. So absolutely something I support right there. For the first time since 1972, Russia, the former USSR, and the U.S. have no treaty limiting strategic nuclear forces. And Dmitry Medvedev come out and said that winter is coming. I think that he was being more comical than anything when he posted that. But the idea is that There are weapons today that make nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. Let's just be honest. The age of nuclear warfare is subsiding greatly, although it still is a threat in the context of third world developing countries. President Putin's special envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, says the satanic liberal elites and their fake propaganda machine have been finally exposed with the things that are coming out in the Epstein files. Now, I'm also interested to see maybe what happens with Russia or other countries, for that instance, when they start to release declassified information pertaining to Epstein. You know, one of the things that we should be doing with our pressure as American citizens is we should be using FOIA requests and pressuring the DOJ and all of them, not only for the Epstein files, which was covered under the congressional law, but also for all the other documentation that intelligence agencies might have classified on Jeffrey Epstein. We need to get it all released. It needs to all come out. So the U.S. was in deliberations with Iran today. Then they stalled. Iran left, yelling and crying. Now they're back on for Friday. Donald Trump sending warnings again out there. They're saying the threat of the U.S., the chances the U.S. hits Iran are high. No, not really. Trump doesn't want to cause war. He doesn't want to destabilize the Middle East. He's going to take the diplomatic route through and through every time. And I think that the fact that Iran is actually at the table talking about this is a massive first step and a good first step. Let me see. This next one is kind of interesting because this is one that I've done a lot of research on and that I've also discussed multiple different times. Bill Gates today. And this is where it gets, this fucking guy. Gene drive is a technique where you give a few mosquitoes an edited gene and it drives itself into their offspring. It could one day help us defeat diseases like malaria. Oh, for fuck's sake, Bill. Male mosquitoes are one of the most important pollinators on the planet. By genetically altering the lifespan of male mosquitoes, you're not only threatening to disrupt the entire planetary ecosystem, but also face the consequences that if this happened, humanity itself would be in dire risk. Stop fucking with nature, Bill Gates. Can someone please stop this lunatic? And by the way, on my Substack, I've written about this massive amounts of times. And if you guys can't remember the web address to the Substack, redpillproject.substack.com, just go to my website, redpills.tv, which is newly revamped. And the articles that you see are actually Substack. And if you click on them, it'll take you to the Substack. So redpills.tv. Russia has announced that its new cancer vaccine, Enteroctomix, has shown a 100% success in clinical trials, is now ready for clinical use. Now, Russia has two new vaccines that are being utilized for cancer, and they were approved last year, and the trial data was astounding. Now they're coming back that the original test trials of Enteroctomix have shown 100% success in clinical trials of curing high-risk, what's the right verbiage here? Late-term cancer patients. They were using stage 4 cancer patients, which have complete reversals. Take this in context with another, I think it's an Argentinian doctor who's just cured pancreatic cancer. And these are huge breakthroughs that are happening right now. And this is what happens when you start to enter the realm of exponentially growing technology. And, last week, Tammy and I were discussing artificial intelligence. We were talking about a scientist by the name of Dr. David Sinclair and what he's doing on longevity research. And I talked about how he was discussing how they've reversed aging. This is no shit, guys. So basically what they did is they were able to take a mouse and mouse and rats, and they were able to genetically alter certain genes, and they were able to give this treatment to mice and rats, where they would take an elderly rat or elderly mouse that was decrepit. They would inject it, and within a week or months, this rat and this mouse were 20 years old again. And then They would wait till they're elderly again, and they do it over. Then they wait till they're elderly again, and they do it over. When Dr. David Sinclair was asked about this experiment, he said, oh, so it's only good 3 times. He says, no, we just stopped after 3 times. You can go on indefinitely. Then they asked, how do you do this? He says, well, what we do is we take your cells, we produce an embryonic clone of you, and then we take those cells that are produced by the embryonic clone, we throw it into some type of concoction, and it reverses aging. And they can even control the dial of how far back they want to send you. They can send you back to 20 years old, 25 years old, 30 years old. I shit you not, this is real. And I was talking about how even Dr. David Sinclair was talking about test trials are supposed to begin next year. Well, guess what? It is next year. The FDA has approved the first age reversal gene therapy trial with researchers claiming aging can be reversed and a startup preparing to test the idea in humans. It's here. It's happening. Now, I have moral conflictions with the methodology that they use, but it's exciting, it's scary, all at the same time. Imagine people like Elon Musk living forever. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I think Elon's cool. You're just going to have continuous innovation for the next 1,000 years while Elon's alive. All right, guys, let me go here. Now, let me kind of get everybody caught up on the week. So tomorrow we have a Q&A directly after the show. I'm going to try to get the show out on time and end on time. And then we'll go right into the Q&A. We'll try to do an hour and a half on the Q&A. The Q&A is on our own private networks. If you did not know, we host a Q&A every Thursday. Try to be every Thursday. You can find that linked up on the main website, redpills.tv, or go to socialredpill.com. And that's it, or just subscribe as a premium subscriber to any of our channels right there. Tomorrow night, not tonight, tomorrow night. Be a premium subscriber on any of our platforms, X, Social Red Pill, redpillproject.substack.com, or redpillproject.locals.com, and you can get into the Q&A tomorrow. But here's the other part. After the Q&A, tomorrow, 10 p.m. Central, 11 Eastern, Alpha Warrior and myself are debuting a new show, Overwatch and The Guardian. You're not going to want to miss this. It's going to be a great show. So that comes tomorrow after the Daily Dose, after the Q&A. So I hope you guys can join us for that. That's all I have for you guys tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. So much love, respect. God bless. Take care. I'm going to leave you guys with this awesome song that you can find at redpillsmusic.com. And a new album is coming out. I actually went back and I got some songs that aren't patriotic. They're just kind of personal songs that I've written throughout my life that I turned into music. So we're going to be, I'll be releasing that here relatively soon. So expect that. Much love, respect, guys. Take care. Good night, everyone.
There was a time when our children stood tall, hand on their hearts, one voice for all. There was a time when honor had weight, when the flag was a symbol, not a debate. There was a time when our history was known, with pride in the rules that made us our own. There was a time, respect for the brave, for those who bled, for the lives they gave. Now the homeland burns in silent war. Truth is twisted, we can't ignore. Through the smoke, a voice still calls. We the people will not fall. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great are served, not ruled by fear. There was a time when leaders stood fast, guarding the people, defending the past. Now corruption wears a crown, lies are fed to tear us down. But Q said watch, and Q said see. The silent war will set us free. From the front lines, soldiers stare, wondering if we're still there. Their blood, their hope, their sacrifice will not be sold for a last price. There was a time, but the time isn't near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, the veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children what it was once like in the United States where men were free.
There was a time, the time is near. The great awakening is here. Dark to light, veil undone. Patriots rise, we are one. Land of the free, home of the brave. No more silence, no more slaves. Answer the call, take back the fight. Children of freedom, stand for the light. There was a time. There was a time. Now is the time. Do it.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation. I want you to get mad.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
The more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
These people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"